Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum and Aibon everybody. Education matters. Yes, you've heard this before. We all have. But we are here today to discuss why it matters. I want to set the stage by talking about the importance of lifelong learning and staying a student for life, no matter your age. And I think for everybody here, this is an important takeaway for all of you. It's a natural tendency for us to think that once we have completed school and started our careers or even business, or even if you have become mothers or homemakers, that there is no need for education. Sometimes we think that we're too old to learn something new. We might not be able to cope up with studies or sit for exams ever again. But education is much more than studies. It's much more than exams. It's about learning and it's about knowledge. Just for a moment, I want you to think about a Dini perspective. Allah's first kalam to Rasulullah was Ikra, meaning read. And in fact, there are almost 800 references in the Quran where great stress is placed upon the acquisition of knowledge. Rasulullah himself said, seeking knowledge is obligatory for every Muslim. There are three things that I want you to take away from what Rasulullah said. One is that seeking knowledge is relevant for all people, men, women, young, old, no matter what age or what stage in career you are. In fact, within our community, there are many of us who are living proof of this. The second point, it's a continuous process. Acquiring knowledge starts from the day you are born until the day you die. And it doesn't specify what kind of knowledge. Knowledge is knowledge, right? And in fact, I believe, right, that knowledge is both an end and a means to an end in itself. In fact, Mola Ali said that your craft is your treasure. And it's my tasawwur that knowledge helps us master our craft. It helps us better our skills and it keeps us continuously improving and updated. Let me ask you, in the age of mobile phones, would you still use a Nokia from 20 years ago? Right? So this is the power of knowledge. And I know to all the students and parents out there, it can be a very confusing time. So many dilemmas. What do I do? Where do I do it? How will I afford it? How can I support myself? Don't worry, guys. It's perfectly normal to be confused and to have questions. Today, we hope to begin a conversation that will answer some of these questions that you have. We may not be able to answer all of them, but don't ever stop asking questions, whether it's during this panel or even after. We are available for you. Please reach out to us to continue this conversation. We've brought together a panel of experienced leaders, masters in their respective fields, to discuss this topic about education. Right? I'll introduce each person as we go along. But first, I'll invite Hussain Bhai Fazle Abbas, who's the chairman and MD of Perigon Lanka, an engineering company, as well as a project management and cost management consultant, to kick us off. Hussain Bhai, over to you.
Thank you, Murtaza Bhai. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim, and salams to everybody who's on this call today. I have been given the task today of probably a little more technical than everyone else, and I just have been asked to talk about how vocations and professions compare. Also to look at opportunities available and the paths to get to where you need to be, and what criteria one uses in determining the path of study that one would follow. And then also I have some personal thoughts that I'd like to share as far as education is concerned. Now, again, it doesn't matter what course of study you are in, it doesn't matter what profession you are in, your ultimate goal is to be recognized by the body that covers that particular vocation or profession. So for example, as an engineer, my ultimate goal is to be a chartered engineer recognized by the Institute of Engineers. Now, what that does, it gives you the recognition and the authority to confirm that you have acquired a level of skill that allows you to work independently and to ensure that you have the necessary knowledge to provide that particular profession or vocation or service that you are providing. Now, there are two ways to get to that particular point. And the first way, the start, is actually to have your primary and secondary education. So your O levels and A levels. That's the traditional way. And then go on to university, get a university degree, then go on and get your practical experience, your work experience, and then sit an exam or a viva or whatever it takes to get yourself professionally recognized. Now that's the traditional way. The traditional way has some issues, as everybody knows. One is that you have to be you have to have the time and commitment both pre-university and post-university to be able to do this. You have to be able to afford it. University education, no matter which direction you go, is not cheap. But there are limitations. In Sri Lanka, for example, if you go the traditional route with the local O-level, A-levels, I think the statistics say that only about 10 or 15% of students are successful in getting into university, those who sit for the A-levels. So it's very limited. The alternative, of course, is the private education, but that comes at a cost. Now, having recognized this, there is a body called the Tertiary and Vocational Education Commission, TVEC, that is set up under the University Grants Commission, that looked at a different way of getting yourself an education. And what they came up with, and this is not something that is only relevant to Sri Lanka, it's internationally recognized, is what is called a National Vocational Qualification System. Now, that is based on several levels, which recognizes the skill that you have acquired, and then based on that skill, will equate it to a different level of education. I'll explain that a little bit more with a visual as we go along. But essentially, there are 7 levels, and once you get to the 7th level, that is equal to a bachelor's degree. And even after O levels, you can enroll in this NVQ program. So you don't have to actually do your A levels, but you have to get an equivalency of your A level by getting into this program and doing the primary levels. So, and then once you go along, and if you have a desire to maybe get a foreign education, at certain point during this level, level 5, I think it is, you are allowed to, you can even enter into a foreign university, it is recognized. The NVQ has two advantages. One is that there is a relatively inexpensive option because it is set up by governmental or public bodies. And some of these are NITA, which is the National Apprentice and Industrial Training Authority, the Vocational Training Authority, National Youth Service Council, and even the Technical College or Department of Technical Education and Training. Now, all these bodies give you a variety of courses that you can do, and it is not limited to the sciences. If you take a look at the VTA, for example, the Vocational Training Authority, they have over 100 courses that will allow you to get this VTA qualification. And these range from agriculture, automotive, building construction, electronics, gems and jewelry, IT, management, printing, AC, textile, and other things. So if you don't like science, no worries. There are the other options, and they all get you to a point where you can get an equivalency. Like I said, some of these programs only require an O level to enter, and the duration ranges from 6 months to several years, depending on which level you want to be qualified. So just, I think I'm going to share a screen which will show you graphically what I'm talking about, it might be easier to understand. Let me see. I think, sorry. One minute, let me just open this. Sorry, I should be able to see this. I did it before. Okay, here we go. Okay, so take a look at it. This is essentially the NVQ levels. So if you see here, there's level 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and each of these levels equate to a certificate. The first 4 levels, once you have finished the first 4 levels, that is equivalent to having achieved a certificate in that particular vocation that you follow. Once you finish level 5, that's equivalent to having a diploma. Level 6 is a higher national diploma. And if you complete all 7 levels, then you have achieved what is equivalent to a degree. Now, also you see these other little bars here. And this tells you, or an employer who's looking to employ you, what level of skill you have acquired and with what level of supervision you can work, right? So the first level says you can work under direct supervision. Second level is work under guidance. Third level, you can work independently and quality monitored. Fourth level, work independently. Fifth, self-working. Of course, sixth, managerial. And seventh, planning and implementation. Now, the most important thing with this education is that you can carry out and do these courses even part-time. So you don't actually have to stop. You don't actually have to stop working while doing this. So, if you can't really afford to stop and go into a full-time education, then you have the opportunity here to get an education while working. And as you complete these levels, your employer is able to easily recognize what level of skill that you have obtained, and therefore it gives them also an ability to be able to place you in the relevant position, give you the promotions and the other things that you need, both financially as well as in terms of promotions and stuff. And this allows you to do it while actually working. Okay. I hope that's clear. It's an alternative path to getting educated. This is recognized internationally. Like I said, you can get into foreign universities. There's all kinds of things open up to you. And in addition to the public places that I talked about, a lot of private institutions also offer this path and courses to allow you to get to a NVQ, right? Level of certification. Now, I'd like to spend a little time in just talking about, there were many questions about how do I choose which career is right for me? How do I choose which subject is right for me? Where do I get myself education in? And I think I have narrowed it down actually to 10 items. The first, obviously, is course content. So before you select a course, I mean, we have a thing called a herd instinct. If one of our friends is doing it, we end up doing it, that kind of thing, which we kind of avoid. And we actually go in and study what the content of a course is and see if that actually interests you. The second one, which is important to anybody who is going to spend time getting an education, is employability. If I get an education in this field, am I employable? How do you know that? You have to essentially, in my view, talk to practitioners, to talk to people who are in that particular field, And there are all kinds of organizations and professional bodies, like I told you earlier, for that cover that particular profession or vocation. And one can always go talk to them and get advice and find out what your chances of being employed once you get out of this are. The third, and I think this is very important, is that one should choose a course depending on one's interest, right? That goes a long way into ensuring that you will be successful within that in that course, right? So take the time to study this carefully. If possible, spend some time in an environment that employs people who have acquired that particular qualification. Do an internship, and that will then allow you to quickly understand whether that is the right interest and course for you. And if not, you always have the option to change, right? There is no hard and fast on this. Most universities, most places of education will allow you to change your mind even after having been enrolled. Then the fourth one is aptitude. Do you have a talent for doing such a thing? Are you good at it, right? Ideally, you should pursue a course that allows you to explore both your interests and your skills. Then the fifth one is commitment, right? And this is important because you are going to be spending a lot of your time and money in acquiring an education, and you want to make sure that you possess the skills and, importantly, the patience to go the distance. The sixth criteria is time, right? All courses are not the same. Various courses have various time durations. So depending on what you are willing to invest, you need to look at that as one of the criteria before you finally decide on what you want to do. Feedback. This question was asked, how do I get feedback? How do I know that I'm choosing the right one? Who do I go to get this information? There is not a lot, but there are options for career counseling that are available in Sri Lanka. And I talked about NITA earlier. NITA has a career guidance counseling section, which will allow even students who are not enrolled at NITA to come in and talk to them. There's the Open University of Sri Lanka also has career guidance. So if you are looking at getting something done, that's one place to go to talk to them. And then there are lots of private consultants. One of the ones I came across is something called Premier Consultants. And then within the community, there is a lot of resource persons, right? I mean, you can always talk to people within the community who will be able to guide you. So that is 7. 8 is your academic performance, right? There are some courses like engineering that require a potential student to be good in certain subjects like mathematics and science. And I think it's important before you get excited about a course that you want to do, you have to assess yourself and see if you will be able to perform well in that course. The 9th, another very important item is finance. So if you are self-sponsored, you need to consider a course that will not have a financial burden on you, because you don't want to be in a position where you cannot continue because of financial constraints, right? Where one gets financing, where one looks for options is outside the scope of what I am talking about. But I think there are options. There are always options out there. And the 10th, and this one is a little different because I think you need to look at your values. One must never choose a course that I guess would force you to sell your soul. If you have a strong will against politics or other things that go against your beliefs, you need to steer away from those courses, because it will only, it's only another item that will cause you not to be successful. So look at that. So in summary, these 10 items are important when one is choosing a course. Okay. Zabai, how am I doing for time? Okay. Let me just spend a few more minutes, because I think one of the important things that I wanted to touch on is that all this holds true for students, whether they are men or women. There is no difference. Everybody can acquire. And like I said, there are many courses that will allow even the women to be able to do a proper work-life balance and still fit within the requirements that we set ourselves as a society, as a community. Okay, I the I am a firm believer that men and women deserve the same opportunity, and I think this has many times been imparted to us by Mola and everyone else, that everybody needs to get an education. Okay. One of the things I think most of you might be aware, if you have been at Burhani Serendib, there is one place like the AOD, the Academy of Design, that offers a range of courses. You can enter after O levels, after A levels. It gives you short courses. It gives you degree programs. It gives you a lot of options in the arts, in design. And if you have that kind of aptitude, that's something to look at. AOD is not the only place. There's lots of other places, and a little research will show you what those options are. So that's one, especially for our female students. The other thing I think Murtazabai touched on when in his introduction is, he says it's never too late, right? There's opportunity on furthering your education is available at any age, right? There is flexibility, whether you're studying, doing something for the first time, or if you're looking to expand your skills, or even looking to do something different, right? Continue to educate yourself, continue to gain knowledge. And once you have, say, for example, set on a career, you get to where you have reached this ultimate goal that you have set for yourself, look for other things to do. I mean, if I take myself as a personal example, I'm an engineer. I had a training in civil engineering, structural engineering, and then went on to set up my own business. And I figured at that point that you needed to diversify. So I got myself knowledge in project management, in cost consultancy, helped me expand my business, helped me move into newer, different areas. And then running a business, it was important that I had some level of management skill. So I had to look at business management as something that would help me successfully run the business. And that too was something that was additional skill or qualification that I acquired. And that holds true. I mean, this is just my personal example, but this holds true for anybody, anywhere, in any profession. So these are a few things that I wanted to partake, to share. I hope that it has been useful. I'm going to hand it back to Murtazabai, and if there are any questions, he will collate that and send it across.
Thanks, Susan Bhai. Thanks, Susan Bhai. I mean, you covered a lot, and it was really important to show everybody who's listening that there are many more options available and how you can access those options. I'm going to hand it over to Kezar Bhai, who's going to use his 25 years of experience across many industries and bring to bear some thoughts on, like you spoke on science and vocational, on the science and vocational area. Kezar Bhai, I'd like you to talk on commerce, business, and bring your experience to bear and give some advice to the listeners here.
Thank you very much, Murtaza Bhai. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. And a very good morning to everybody who's watching us from home and wherever you're watching us from. Like Murtaza Bhai suggested, I will speak in more detail on the business angle as well as the accounting options that are available. Hussein Bhai spoke about vocational development, and he touched a little bit on science, but I will focus primarily on business and accountancy. There are a few questions that a lot of students, people who are thinking of pursuing education keep asking me. So I thought I'll just touch on the three most critical questions that they usually speak to me on. First is, do I take a academic route or a professional route in pursuing my education? The next question they ask me is that do I decide based on the job prospect, financial remuneration, the financial consideration, etc. And the third question they ask me is, do I specialize? Very, very important questions. And let me try and see whether I can answer those without complicating matters too much. So the first question, do I take an academic route or a professional route? Now, when you're talking about a business degree or accounting qualification, etc., you can take two routes. One is the academic route. The academic route is you try to get a degree, a master's, or even a PhD or something in business and finance and accountancy. You take the academic route, where you go to a university, you decide whether it's a local university or you go overseas and you get academic qualification. The second route is the professional route, where directly after your A levels, you really don't need to get a degree. You can directly pursue a professional qualification. You can do that in SEMA, accountancy, marketing, HR, IT. There are numerous fields that you can go into, but you can directly pursue that route. Now, the critical question to answer here is, which is the route that works best? That can be answered a little simply if you think about it. Now, Sri Lanka is a very unique place that we are in. If you take the rest of the world, uh, even to pursue a professional qualification, they require you to have the business degree. They want you to at least have a general degree or a basic degree. Otherwise, they don't think your academic education is complete. So if you were to even go to the Dubai or Qatar or any of those countries, when you say that you don't have a degree, it becomes a problem. But for some reason in Sri Lanka, and I don't know whether any other countries, you really don't need a degree to pursue a professional qualification. And the employers also don't generally ask you that question. Even directly after your A levels, if you want to do accountancy, you can take the CIMA, ACCA chartered route. You want to do something in marketing, you can take SLIM, Sri Lanka Institute of Marketing, or SIM UK route. If you want to do HR, there are various courses. You're allowed to do that. So to determine which option you should choose, the question you have to ask yourself is, am I going to be the country where the degree is required or not? Or if you're going to be predominantly in Sri Lanka and you want to pursue a professional line of work, there is really no need of a degree. You don't need to spend that time. But if you're looking at another country, you're looking at migrating, you're looking at options overseas, it becomes an absolute important requirement, because in those countries, if you don't have a degree, your professional qualification is a little incomplete. They look at you in a different way. So that's the answer to that question. The second, the question is, do I decide my job prospect on financial consideration? Do I decide, now I have done my A levels, now what do I decide? Do I go into marketing, HR, finance? So a lot of people have this preconception that, let me look at accounting because, I can do this and I can start earning money fast. But I must stress on this fact that that's not the right way of thinking. That shouldn't be the way of thinking. Your primary consideration should not be how much you're going to get paid initially. The order of preference should be, the order of the deciding factor should be, Hussein Bhai also touched on this, it should be the first question you have to ask yourself is, and I quote, something every one of us knows, a person every one of us knows or has at least heard of, is Steve Jobs. He made a very simple statement. He said, the only way to do great work is to love what you do. If you haven't found it, keep looking. Don't settle. I'll repeat that. The only way to do great work is to love what you do. If you haven't found it, keep looking. Don't settle. So what that means is that don't look at a profession or a line of work which has a lot of money to offer initially. Because as time goes by, if you don't love, or at least like what you do, you're going to get gassed out. Then all the money in the world is not going to be helpful. So figure out what you have a passion for, what you like doing, and try to find studies and work on those lines. The second consideration is, is the marketability of the profession you're getting. Now, if I touched on this a little while ago, but are you going to be in this country or are you going to go overseas? For example, if you're going to pick up a subject like actuarial sciences in Sri Lanka, that has a very, very narrow opportunity in Sri Lanka. If at all, you might find work in one of the multinationals or an insurance company at most. But if you look at the US, there's a huge demand for a person who has actuarial science experience. So it's very important to figure out what market you're going to approach with the qualification that you have. And finally, the third consideration is how much will this pay me? How much is this going to pay me? Obviously, you don't do everything because you love to do it and okay, the market allows it, you need to be paid. So tertiary, what most people usually think is the primary consideration becomes a tertiary consideration. How much does this job pay? Then the next consideration is how fast can I go up the corporate ladder? And finally, the most important thing, which Murtaza Bhai spoke about when he started the program today, how does it allow me to move from an employee to an entrepreneur? That becomes very important because ultimately the objective is whatever line that I get into, however, whichever way I choose to move forward, how do I transition from being an employee to an entrepreneur? So that becomes also a consideration. Now, the third question is, do I specialize? Now, we know when we see accountants, they have multiple qualifications in accounting. They would carry CIMA, ACCA, Chartered, CMA, etc., etc. Do I specialize in this? The answer to that question is it's a little bit of both. You specialize and don't specialize. You should specialize, but also you start off your career in specialization. So if you're going in the accounting field, stick to the accounting field. But as you move forward and as you grow through your education, you start also acquiring other qualifications in non-related areas, which will allow you to grow in an organization. So that's the third part. You see, I'll give you a good example how this works. In the apparel sector, you have something called a jumper. A jumper is a most valuable person in the production line. That person, we call them a jumper because in a sewing line, they have all the skills necessary to do a garment, to finish a garment, an apparel, piece of apparel. So there is a quota of jumpers available, and when somebody is absent or somebody is not there, they jump to that. That's why we call them a jumper. If a sewer is not available, they sew. If a person who attaches button is not available, they go and so they become jumpers. So they don't specialize in one area; they have multiple skills, and those are the people who are paid the most in the production. So aspire to become a jumper. And there's another saying. There's a very popular saying that goes on. This is a very old thing. My father used to say this. Don't be a jack of all trades and master of none. So you become a jack of all trades and master of none. That means you learn everything, but you don't know one thing in detail. I like to tweak that statement a little differently. I suggest that you become a jack of all trades, but at least become a master of one. Right? So you take the end of the none and it becomes one. So you become jack of all trades, but become a master of one. That is specialization. You specialize in one area, but you must have knowledge in all aspects of business, marketing. So if you're focusing on finance, you move on to finance. Good idea to understand HR a little. Good idea to understand marketing a little. Maybe pursue education in marketing or HR along with finance, but understand the business because business is not just one function. Now, let me give you an example of how I pursued my education. Now, after A-levels, I finished my A-levels. I did commerce accounts for my A-levels. Then I decided to do a degree. I joined a local institute, spent 4 to 5 months there and realized this is not for me. I got sick of it. I decided to leave. Then I thought maybe I had a passion for electronics. I'll try to do electronics. So I went and enrolled myself into an electronics program, a diploma in something. I started doing that, figuring things out. I realized that I love electronics, but I then realized that I don't like what goes into electronics. So I decided no, this is also not going to work for me because it was difficult. When you listen to music, it's one thing, but when you see how the music is coming out of those gadgets, it's a very difficult thing. And I realized I don't have the aptitude to do that or the patience to do that. Then what happened? Then I was thinking, now what do I do? So at that time, my sister was doing CIMA Then I thought, okay, let's piggyback on something. I'll also enroll myself into SEMA. So I get myself enrolled into SEMA. Was doing SEMA, then realized that, okay, this makes sense to me. I can relate to this. This makes sense to me. So started doing that. 2 years into the SEMA course, decided to join KPMG, worked at KPMG while studying, moved on. Then after marriage and after I had my son, I realized that while I was doing this, I realized I'm specializing too much because I had done SEMA, ACCA, etc. I realized that to be competitive, I need to have another qualification so that people take me seriously about something else. I decided I want to do marketing. I started doing marketing. So I managed to do that as well. So why I'm giving you this example is, my example is not something that the people who are listening today should follow. Because I went on a trial and error basis for 2 reasons. Because at that time, we are talking about 25 years ago, we didn't have all the resources. We didn't have many people to speak to. Even if we had, we didn't have access to them or whatever. That's not the approach to follow. But even if you do follow that approach, you can still do something. It's not a disaster also. But right now we have access to people. Hussein Bhai touched on it. Hussein Bhai spoke about various institutes, various committees, various people who you can talk to. So reach out, talk to. We are all available. This group of people. There are people who are extended groups. Now here we have Hussein Bhai, who's an engineer. I'm an accountant. Hussein Bhai is in business, and he understands IT also fairly reasonably well. But then there are other areas which you may want to specialize in, and we have access to people. So feel free to get in touch with us, and we will probably link you up with the relevant people and take it forward. So with that comment, I think I've probably covered the areas that I had to cover. Any questions? Please feel free to text to the WhatsApp group or whatever, and if time permits, we'll take it up. Or otherwise, you can always get in touch with any of us, and we'll be able to answer those questions. Back to you, Murtaza. Thank you.
Thanks, Kesar Bhai. You covered a lot of areas, and there are many questions. But I will let Huzaifa Bhai first speak, and then we'll come back to questions for the panelists. Huzaifa Bhai, you as a director of Akbar Brothers, you have a lot of experience in getting people real world ready. So I'd like you to touch on that, and also the role that education plays in getting real world ready. Huzaifa Bhai, over to you.
Thanks. I'll just switch on to PowerPoint if you don't mind. Can you see that?
Yeah, you're good to go, Huzaifa Bhai. We can see that.
Thanks. So for some of you who know me from cricket, that's good. But for those who don't, my name is Huzaifa Akbar Ali. I'm a director at Akbar Brothers. This is a company that mainly exports tea. We also engage in other types of businesses. This is my first webinar. I don't do many talks, so please excuse me. I'm not an expert on this stuff. My talk is mainly catered at people who, after secondary education, want to end up either starting their own business, or maybe they want to join their family business. In my talk, what I'll do is I'll try and use some of my personal experience, and I have also spoken to many people from our community who are in business, and I'll try and offer some advice as to how to go about this. The reward of doing business can be really great, but you have to be patient. It takes time. To build a successful business and to build a name takes at least 10 to 15 years. It's a lot of hard work, a lot of commitment, a lot of patience, and of course, God's will. The reward is really good. To reap the reward, you have to wait at least 10 to 15 years. So be patient, and education is going to play a big part of it. Let's go to the next slide. So one of the advice that I want to give most school leavers is don't jump into business straight away. There's a lot more that you need to do. You need to get mature. Okay. Tertiary education and work experience is an essential part. I consider work experience also a part of the education. You need to spend a few years in a company, either in a corporate or in a family business or someone else's business, in order to understand how to conduct yourself in business. I have spoken to many of my friends, many successful businessmen, and a lot of them who started business straight after school. One of the biggest sort of regrets that they have is that they never did any formal tertiary education. And they feel that if they had done some tertiary education, maybe now it would help them. Also, most successful businessmen throughout the board that I've spoken to have all done some sort of work experience, either be it in a big corporate company, or in another family business, or even in their own family business. As I mentioned earlier, business is a long journey of doing things the right way for many, many years. It takes at least 10 to 15 years to build a name for yourself and then reap the rewards. So be patient and start the right way. Before I get on to tertiary education, talking about tertiary education and work experience, something that I'd like to add is about networking. In business, you have to understand that you need to network with many people. From school, you may be only knowing the community or only your school friends. Things like getting involved in road track, getting involved in Leo, Toastmasters, networking actively with your classmates in tertiary education, attending trade shows and things like that. Those are all important parts of your networking, and maybe building up people later, so that you can either use them as service providers, as suppliers, or maybe even potential customers. As regard to tertiary education, my personal opinion is that if you can afford it, a formal degree, a formal undergraduate degree is always very, very helpful. You should, as Hussein Bhai said, if you have all the 10 prerequisites and you have the ability, and you can afford it, I would definitely go in for an undergraduate degree. If not, and you intend to start something like a business, maybe CIMA, CMA, all those courses that Kezar Bhai was talking about, they are all highly recommended, because a fundamental knowledge of accountancy and financial accountancy and management accountancy will definitely help you in business. Say if you don't do a formal degree or a formal what you call professional qualification, then I would at least suggest a sort of a certificate course in these sort of fields. Maybe an AAT or a certificate course from their open university in accountancy would really help. In addition to understanding financial and management accountancy, you need to be introduced to topics like Sri Lankan business law, Sri Lankan labor law, taxation. Taxation is also something that is one of my favorite points, and that is that a lot of people who start business early think that by not paying taxes and not being good with the government, you can get away. But I always feel later on it'll when you grow, it always ends up scuttling your business. So start the right way. Learn about taxation law, the use of business software, accounting software, payroll software. All those things really will help you in future. Also, a knowledge of accountancy is very useful. If you are not doing a formal course like professional course like SIM or like the SLIM postgraduate degree of marketing, then I would suggest at least a certificate level course, maybe 3 to 6 month certificate level course in this field would be very, very useful. These days, digital marketing is always is growing in more and more in importance. And I highly recommend, that for digital marketing, things like online sales, creating web pages, search engine optimization, Facebook, Facebook promotions. These are things that, soft skills that you can have that help you in growing your business and, maybe finding new markets. The other thing that I would say is be innovative when you're starting a business. Don't go, maybe go down the traditional lines, but you don't have to become a hardware merchant or a food sales merchant or even office supply trader. You can think of innovative lines, and a lot of the things that Hussein Bhai was talking about in the NVQ qualifications, all those things can end up starting a business for yourself. if you do end up wanting to start a business in, let's say, air condition engineering, or in automotive repair, or making making toys, or even interior decorating, or landscaping, or gardening, I would highly recommend an NVQ qualification in one of those fields. And also with that, work experience with a successful company. A successful company in one of these fields, you will understand how to go about running your business. So both work experience and qualification, tertiary qualification in those fields. Whether you intend to start working in a family company or you intend to start working for yourself, you need to have some work experience. I think this is an essential part of your education. It is a part of your, it is part of your education in starting your business journey. Many successful people that I have spoken to in our community have started their journey with some sort of work experience. I could recommend starting, I wouldn't recommend starting straight out of high school, just, straight after high school, starting your own business. There are many drawbacks to that. Ideally, if you intend to start in your own family business, I would recommend that you start with working with somebody else. Maybe a big corporate is an excellent chance to learn about their culture, their values, their systems. Even you learn the discipline of being a salaried employee, to come to work on time, to leave on time, and things like that. To work, when you work for another company, please be ethical. Learn that you are coming there to learn, not to steal their business, not to become a competitor, not to leave. Be upfront with them and leave in a nice way. When you start working for your family business, for the first few years, please learn from your elders. Your elders have learned from many years of experience. It is again a part of your education. Learn the business, learn how to deal with customers and suppliers, learn how to treat employees, learn the systems that they have put in place in order to make sure that the business doesn't undergo many risks and has the controls. These are all things that you need to learn as part of your work experience. Some things that you learn from work experience are, as I told you earlier, how to build good relationship with customers and suppliers. You get a few years while you're working for somebody else to learn this, how to motivate your employee, how to handle money. Simple things like realizing the difference between cash and profit, how much needs to be reinvested into the business, discipline, simple things like working hours, taking holidays, not procrastinating, discipline with cash, understanding that cash in the business does not mean profit. You need to pay your creditors on time, things like that. Another big and important thing that you learn with work experience is ethics. How to build a business name takes a long time. It takes 10 to 15 years of doing things consistently right to build a reputation. You need to keep your word to both your suppliers and your customers. You need to be ethical with your competitors, treat your employees well. These are all things, all what I've told you are essential things that you will educate yourself by doing, a few years of work experience. And I feel that is a big part. Even if you're doing a degree or you're doing a part-time degree, work experience is, I think, an essential part of doing your starting your business life. You need to continually update yourself while you're doing business. Me personally, I also continually update myself with new technology, new advances in technology, new regulations, new laws are coming into place. What I find is I like attending seminars or online courses. Even there are some more formal short courses that you can do, and I would highly recommend this. Keep learning every day. That is part of the business learning journey. Each day, go to bed asking yourself how you can improve your business, how you can attempt to make it better the next day. In my short talk, I have mainly targeted this talk at people who are school leavers wanting to go into business. I have emphasized the need to educate yourself and to continue to educate yourself, to be patient. Before starting your business journey, arm yourself with tertiary education and work experience. Thanks, and I put it back to Murtaza. How do I do this?
Thanks, Huzaifa Bhai. We'll come back to you with a few questions later on. But before that, there's just sort of one thing I'd like to add. You know, when I'm confused as to which direction I need to take, and I'm sure when many students and parents are confused about what direction they can take, one source that we always turn to is Akamola. And obtaining Raza from Mola, helps us. He's the ultimate guide. He will, guide us in the right path and take the burden of a lot of confusion off our heads. That's one thing I'd like to say. And the second thing I'd like to say is we speak a lot of being business minded. So I'd like to move on to this topic of what it means to be business minded. And this often confuses people. I'd like to refer back to a bayan that Akamola made during Ashura in Colombo. And let me read this out because it clearly clarifies what it means to be business-minded versus service-minded. And this is how it goes. Ali Qadar Mola said that Burhanuddin Mola would often say that you need to switch from being service-minded to being business-minded. A service-minded individual is one who believes that it is a person or a company that provides him with his wealth and livelihood. Those who are business-minded, on the other hand, place their faith in Allah Ta'ala, knowing that it is Allah Ta'ala who is the provider of all livelihood. So this is a clear differentiation in being in the difference between being business-minded and being service-minded. Kezar Bhai, I'd like you to start us off on this particular question. What are your thoughts on being business-minded? Is it a career choice or is it a mindset?
First, it's a very interesting question. It's a question that I think is misunderstood, especially in our community. So let me clarify what business-minded means. Now, the general perception or the thinking behind business-minded is that the moment we use the word business, it's understood to be you're either trading or you're manufacturing and doing something to that effect. But what is meant by Mola's vision or his bayan, everything is that business-minded means that you aspire, you take your path in such a way that finally you end up being your own boss. You become an entrepreneur. So that necessarily doesn't mean you become a trader or a manufacturer. Those are two options. But you can get into the service industry. You can become a marketeer. You can be so many different things. Now, if I were to take myself as an example, I started working at KPMG. I was working for an organization. Then I started working for a corporate. Then slowly developed my skills in such a way that I was able to move into running my own consultancy and training company. That's what is meant by business-minded, that you aspire to be your own boss and that you have total control over what you do. I hope I have answered your question.
Thanks, Kezar Bhai. Huzaifa Bhai, I'd like you to sort of weigh in on this. Even if you're in a job, can you still be business-minded? Can you still think like an entrepreneur?
Yeah, I would agree with Kezar Bhai that finally, maybe you need to think of yourself as, an entrepreneur, and maybe one day, being in a service industry doesn't mean that you're not an entrepreneur, and be business minded, and maybe one day start your own business is also something that you could aspire to.
Awesome. Hussain Bhai, even if you follow the path of profession or professional education or a vocational education, I remember you were saying that it is still important for you to understand business. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, absolutely. I mean, if at the end of the day, one aspires to be an entrepreneur, I think understanding how business operates, how business works, how one manages one's business, and eventually, as you grow, how you manage your employees, how you manage Like Huzaifa said, how you manage your money, how you manage your finances is imperative. And so unless you have an idea of how to do it without getting yourself into trouble, you're not able to run a successful business. There are two things really. One is, what Huzaifa said, it takes time. It takes 10 to 15 years, right? I just, from my personal experience, it actually took 15 years before I started my own business. And I did that with um, with a lot of trepidation, but with the Dua Mubarak of Akamola. I mean, at the end of the day, it all goes back to that, and I think it's important that we all understand that.
Fantastic. I'd like to give a
if I may just
yeah,
add
Kesar
to
bhai.
that, Murtaza bhai,
Sure, sure.
I don't know whether it's a coincidence or not. Maybe it's whatever. It took me 15 years as well, Hussein bhai. So
Correct. I mean, good things come to those who wait and those who work hard. Um, there's one perspective I like to add. Being in the advertising industry, we spoke about people who come, who need to gather diverse work experience, diverse qualifications. And one of the things that we look for when we hire people is this particular diversity. We don't like to have a team of where everybody has followed the same education. Everybody is marketers. We actually look for people who stand out. And we have hired people in the past. In my team itself, I have people who are sociologists, who are agriculture experts, who are film experts, and who are psychologists, who are architects, and they are working in advertising. And it's this diversity that allows people to bring different perspectives into the work that they do. So it doesn't always mean that you follow one particular path, one particular stream, and for the rest of your life, right? Kezar bhai, our panelists, I'd open this question to you, which basically is about, is it okay to pivot? Let's say you are going down one particular career path and you realize, maybe I want to do something different. Down the line, is it okay to pivot?
if I may answer that, I think I gave that example. I did multiple pivots. In my stories, multiple pivots. It's all right to pivot. It's all right to pivot, especially when you know that you're going down the wrong road. It's good to pivot. Try to avoid the pivoting process by talking to many people as you can before you make your decisions. But even if you have made a mistake, anywhere down the line, I don't think it's a bad idea to change, because you're going to get gassed out. If you don't love what you do, you're going to get gassed out. Just think about it. If Steve Jobs had, after multiple failures, had opted not to pursue Mac and Apple, etc., and probably had gone and built gas cookers or something like that, what this world would be. We don't want that to happen. So follow your passion. And I must tell the youngsters who are listening over, follow your passion, the money will follow. Don't invest it. Don't change it the other way around. Don't follow money to, find happiness. And that's not going to happen. That's going to be a short-term strategy. A long-term strategy is find happiness in what you do. Money will follow.
To add to that, I would say definitely do something that you're interested in. And if you go down a path and you're not happy with it, definitely pivot, like what Kezar and Murtaza bhai were saying. But also don't be a rolling stone. Do your research, like Hussein bhai was saying. Do your research. Take time before you decide you want to do something, and then going down that field. Because some people may think that you can pivot. Start 3 or 4 undergrad degrees. That's not the way you should go about it.
I mean, just to add to that, I think, you choose a path, you do all the research, you do all the things, you start, you finally get yourself qualified, you get employed, or you have your business. You may still be unhappy. And at that point, it's never too late. I mean, I think there's so many opportunities out there. I don't think you should just live your life in a situation where you're doing something you don't enjoy. I mean, I've been in this business for 35 plus years, and I enjoy coming to work. I enjoy doing what I do. I enjoy it every day. And I thank God that my path took me there. And the question is always asked: what I do in my O levels and A levels, is it important in getting into a career? I think not. If I take myself as a personal example, my father having been a doctor, I think there was always that little pressure that one needs to become a medical professional. I started off, my A levels were in zoology and botany. I went to university. My admission was as to do something in the field of zoology. In the time that I spent between applying to university and actually going to university, I spent some time at a friend's work site. I so enjoyed the engineering part that I went to university. I mean, that at that time the option was there to switch to whatever you wanted to do, and I switched. And without having done mathematics or science or anything related to engineering in my A levels, I still ended up becoming an engineer. So that option is always there. I mean, there is nothing to stop you from doing what you want to do. And if you have to change to be happy, do it.
Nice. Okay, I'm going to move on to this topic again, touch on what I started speaking about at the beginning, which is about lifelong learning. And I'll just start with my experience on this whole topic. After I finished my A levels, I did CIM because that's kind of what everybody was doing. And at that time, I really didn't know what other options were available. It led me to advertising. And 10 years after I was in that industry, I decided to do my master's. Now, like Kezar Bhai said, it was not required at all, right? CIM was more than enough for me to get the job and grow in that career. But I felt that it was important to do my master's to build my reputation, to add credibility, to create a brand for myself. Now, in doing my master's, if I'm really honest with everybody here, I cannot remember 80% of what I learned, right? But I bring this up because many students ask, why should I go to school? Why should I study so much? All knowledge is available online. I might as well learn it at home, right? Will I ever quote Shakespeare or need algebra, later on in my life? But I'll tell you, my personal experience in doing the master's was two things. One is that it taught me discipline, right? It gave a structure to my thinking. It taught me how to write, how to research, how to speak, how to convince, critical thinking, problem solving, lateral thinking, confidence, and so on. Never mind the theory. All of these things I value much more, and I use it every day in my life. And the second thing that doing the master's taught me was that it allowed me to network. It allowed me to turn my contacts into professional contacts and personal relationships that have helped me, throughout my career. And this to me is the value that I gained from furthering my education. I didn't need to do it, but I did it, and I realized that the benefits that I got was much more than 1 + 1 is equal to 2. 1 + 1 became 5 for me. Kezar Bhai, I'd like to start with you. The value of doing your A levels. Would you like to touch on that?
Yes, a very interesting point, and something that I've always spoken to. I think I've had a session or two with the Burani sir and the school children also, and when I meet kids also, I keep telling them, you see, most of the educational qualification right now we have, you see, the world has become so fast-paced that even education has become fast-paced. So people have come up. End of the day, education is also a business, but we must realize we have to draw the line. So you have multiple programs that allow you to bypass A levels and join in. Now I know ACC allows that. I think CIMA also allows that. I know multiple degree programs that allows you to bypass A levels. Now, from a perspective, it's not a problem. You see, when you become employed and you go down the road of a professional development, nobody worries about what O-level grades or A-level grades or results that you got from CIMA or any of your degrees. They just want to know you have a qualification to support your capabilities. Thereafter, it's all about who you are. It's like a ticket. Your education is like a ticket for entry. After that, it's all the skills that you develop. Now, that is where A-level comes in. As a personal experience, my personal experience was going through those 2 years of advanced levels changed my personality. You see, what happens is in most schools, A levels gives you the opportunity to become sports captains, debate team leaders, allows you to take part in dramas. Not that the previous classes don't, but it becomes very mature at that age. So those 2 years just opened up so many personality traits of mine. I actually used to be an introvert, a very strong introvert. I spoke to selected people, used to struggle to speak. Opportunity came to take part in a drama. I was forced into it. I got into it, and then my whole personality changed. Now those opportunities come through A levels, and what we must realize is we are talking about education, which is the primary objective of today's discussion. But after a particular point in your career and after you've gathered all these things, it's not the qualification that takes you forward. It's your capability, your confidence. You mentioned that, Murtaza bhai, your networking skills, etc. And I am a strong believer that the advanced level 2 years allows you to develop that very strongly. So my advice to anybody who's in school, please finish your 2 years of A levels. Take all the opportunities that you have. Let your primary objective be your studies, but do not let the opportunities of sports, other arts, various opportunities that come to develop your personality, take it and move on. In summary, to answer your question, no running away from A levels. As far as I'm concerned.
If I may
Hussain
just
bhai,
add,
yeah,
I think,
yeah.
if I may just add, I think he's absolutely correct, 100%. It's not only A levels, it's your university, it's everywhere. And like you said, you went and did a master's. You don't remember the theory, but you remember other things. And that holds true for A levels also. I think it's absolutely spot on what Kezar said.
Huzaifa bhai, would you like to weigh in on that? I mean, the question is basically on the need for lifelong learning. Let's say you started a successful a business and 10, 15 years down the line, you are successful. But sometimes you feel that you don't have time to study. Is it still important to study?
Let me get to that after I agree with Kaiser. A levels and university. The maturity, the 2 years that you take to mature in A levels. For me, I did sciences and I did maths, physics, chemistry for A levels. And I always say that the O levels was just like stamp collecting. It's so easy when you look at the A levels. A levels only makes you start thinking about sciences. The O level maths and stuff like that, is just, mechanics of, learning a few tricks and going into the exam and doing things. So for me, in order to sort of go into, I studied engineering and I studied computer science. And in order to go into both those fields, without my A levels, I would have been lost. In terms of lifelong learning, for me, I don't have the time, but I always yearn for it. I'm continually doing Udemy courses. At the moment, I have about 2 or 3 Udemy courses. It's really good because you can do it from your house and, you can stop and start whenever you want to. And the cost in Sri Lanka is really low. I think in USA, you pay about $200 if you are with a US IP trying to do a Udemy course. Here, you can do it for like $10. They give you a very, very good short course with a certificate at the end of it.
And I'm sure during lockdown, it gave so many people an opportunity to update their skills, learn new skills, and the amount of resources available online for free or for a nominal amount was considerable, right?
Yeah, even you get YouTube and some Coursera courses. Even I think Harvard Business School was good enough to put a lot of their courses online. And you just should take opportunity. If someone is willing to teach you something, go and learn it. That's what I say.
Hussain bhai, you were nodding your head.
Yeah, I mean, it just goes back to what we were talking earlier. I mean, the value of studying at any point in your life is invaluable. I mean, there is no comparison. Take the opportunities, take every opportunity you can get to go forward. I mean, Harvard Business School. I mean, how many people have the opportunity to go and take a course at Harvard Business School? You had it free, you had it online. Do it. Spend the time. I mean, you need to find the time. Not having time is a fallacy. You don't. you can always find the time to do what you want to do. I mean, we always do that. I mean, we procrastinate when it comes to exercise. We procrastinate when it comes to namaz. We procrastinate in all these things. But it doesn't take time. You need to be able to find the time.
And Murtaza bhai, actually now you don't have an option, because if you take most of the professional, I don't know about the academic qualifications, the other panelists might be able to answer this better, but for me to hold on to my memberships of my CIMA, ACCA, marketing, etc., you have something called CPD that we have to do. Otherwise, because you finished your CIMA doesn't mean you can use those alphabets after your name if you don't qualify for CPD. What CPD means is continuous professional development. I think you have to put some 40 hours or 50 hours of learning every year, and you need to record that, and they may call you all of a sudden and ask for the records to see whether you've actually been doing your CPD. And if you don't, they can take that membership away from you. So even the professional bodies have realized that you can't stop at doing a qualification and just rest on your laurels. You have to continuously develop yourself.
The final thought on this subject of lifelong learning is that I'm sure everybody knows, if you take an example from, Aka Mola, even Tahir Saifuddin Mola, Burhanuddin Mola, they have all been, chancellors of Aligarh University. The Shehzada Sabs, Bu Sabs, they have all obtained, their doctorates later on in life, and they have continued their learning. And I don't think anybody should make an excuse saying that, oh, I don't have the time, I can't do it, I can't sit for another exam, it's not going to be valuable for me in the business I'm doing. There's just no excuse on that topic.
Oh yeah, I second that. I'll tell you a good example on that, Murtaza bhai. During last Ashera, I was petrified and I was put against the wall because we were involved in managing some of the finances, and all of them were asking us about various reports. And all. I was wondering whether I'm doing a social service here, and whether I'm reporting in the corporate sector. It was like that. So the community is also becoming very conscious about doing things in a professional and an organized and a structured way. I mean, we had to give reports. We were running our accounts and finances on software. So you see, we are moving away from that old school where, our community, our culture also suggests that education is the way to move forward. And I reiterate what you said, Murtaza bhai, even our religious leaders are all academically or professionally qualified people. So there is no doubt in anybody's mind about this at the moment.
There is one question that came up. I'd like to throw it to the panel, which is, I mean, we're an all-male panel here, right? But I think what we are saying is true regardless of our, as we've been discussing, regardless of our age, regardless of our gender. Kesafa, is there any specific advice you can offer ladies when they're thinking about choosing their path in education and thereafter a career?
Let me answer that question. I personally think that whether it's a male or a female, a gent or a lady, the thinking process remains the same. There is no change in the way you think. If you want to pursue education, you pursue education. You want to become a professional, you become a professional. But you need to keep in mind what your ultimate objective is. Now, in Sri Lanka, predominantly, we have a setup where the gents work and the ladies, if you take a ratio, don't work all that much. In Sri Lanka, I'm just talking about Sri Lanka, not the rest of the world. But that's also changing. But if your objective is to spend more time at home and become a family person, then I would suggest the ladies to take that into consideration when they are choosing their line of. That's about it. Otherwise, if they want to become professionals, by all means, they can become accountants, they can become lawyers, they can become scientists, whatever they want. But if their objective is somewhere down the line that they need to become homemakers, etc., do something that will allow you to become an entrepreneur, that will allow you to use that skill and do something from home. Because don't get into this mode of, okay, I'm going to become a homemaker, I'm going to stay home, I'm going to cook, clean, and watch my children. No, don't do that. Do your education, do the cooking, cleaning, and taking care of the children if that is what you wish. But over and above that, you can always support your spouse in their business, maybe taking care of financials from the back. Now, I know a person who's in our community who took the path of SEMA or some other accountancy process, is now full-time at home and is very successful. I think she reviews annual reports and gives her comments on that, so she can work from home. And likewise, I know a lot of people who are doing small businesses from home, etc. So the point that I'm trying to make is, I must be very clear on this. There is no difference between how a gent or a lady decides on their course of education or employment, but keep in mind what your ultimate objective needs to be.
Hussein bhai, you touched on this, but would you like to weigh in on this as well?
Yes, I mean, I agree. I think the important thing, whether you're a male or a female, is being able to achieve a work-life balance. Now, whether we like it or not, it has fallen on the female the role of spending a lot more time. I wouldn't say bringing up the children, but spending a lot more time with the children, being able to keep the home and house the way it is. And it's traditional. I mean, man has gone out to work, the woman has stayed at home. But that has changed. I think the woman being at home doesn't necessarily mean that they should not get an education or be an entrepreneur in their own right. The opportunities are there. And I think, I mean, I'm a firm believer. I mean, I have two daughters who both have degrees and are doing advanced degrees, and that has not stopped them. Well, at least the older one, the young one still to be married, but the older one, I mean, that has not stopped them from having a proper work-life balance. You have to have the support of your spouse. But I think that's a given today. I think, even from a purely economic standpoint, having that extra earning capacity obviously is a help to the home. And there are so many families who have people who are both men and women are educated, but the woman might be bringing in more money, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. So you need to keep that objective in mind, and you need to be able to form that work-life balance. I think that's the important thing. Education, picking it up, doing it, absolutely no difference.
Fantastic. I'm going to move on to, I've left this area, this topic, which is very important, but I've left it to the last, which is about financing my studies, right? And I'd like the panel to talk about what options are available to help students finance their studies if self-financing is not going to help be their sole sort of resource or recourse. Kezabai, would you like to start us off?
It's a challenge. We understand, and a lot of people face this challenge. So we've set up a committee called BCHRD, Burhani Council for Human Resource Development, where Hussein Bhai is also a member along with me. We've been in operation for, I don't know, maybe 15 years, Hussein Bhai, at least 12 years. And we've been doing that as part of our terms of reference, so to speak. So these kids can come and speak to us. We will help them decide. They can come along with their parents if they like. And we don't guarantee finding them funding, but we will do our level best to see how we can figure that out for them. And mind you, we've been successful in the past in doing so, because you see, we have many people in the community, outside the community, who are willing to support children who are serious about their education. You see, you can't just come for a meeting and say, I think I want to do this, I think I want to do. You can't be graying that. When you come to meet us, you need to support your request with solid hard work that you put in the past, and be able to establish to us, saying that if I am given this opportunity and if funding is available, I can achieve this. Then I think there are many people we can link them up with, or solutions we may be able to find. It's not a guarantee, but we can try.
Well, I think funding, first of all, the first type of funding that one needs to look at is the funding that one can get from the educational institution, right? There is a huge amount of money out there that is available for students who show the correct aptitude, the skill, the secondary education, and there are many institutions out there who are willing to give you money to help fund your education. It may not be 100%, it'll be in terms of depending on the money available there, and depending on the aptitude of the particular student. There are so many institutions out there, both local and overseas, that will help sponsor your education. So that is the primary thing. I think that should be the first thing. That should be the first thing that students look for. Now, beyond that, if you need money to bridge, then if we talk about our community, there are many options out there. There are many people out there who are willing to help our children, both organized as well as on a personal level. And I have been fortunate in being involved in the decision making on many of these, and I'm proud to say that there are students who are doctors, lawyers, engineers, architects, who have been given this opportunity because they have shown that they are serious about it, and they also, it is a cycle, right? Because once you have got that, you're able to go there, you're able to do that, you can give back. And that is a key thing in determining how you are looked at in terms of obtaining this financing. Then obviously the other area is pure karza, and the loan schemes. There are educational loan schemes available within our community, and we those are things also that we can take advantage of. So there are multiple things out there. I don't think money should be a criteria. If it does become a criteria, then we talked about the vocational way of doing it, where you can self-finance while working. You can finance your education. So I don't think money should be something that should hold you back from getting an education. So why you might want to add something while we wait for.
No, I think both of you guys covered it well, and not much to add to that topic.
I just like to repeat what I said. When you do come to all the options Hussein Bhai suggested, it has to be a very strong case. It's actually your first business plan, to be honest with you, that you prepare, where you're selling yourself to be funded. So the people you're speaking to need to buy into your business plan. So you need to have a very strong track record. You can't come purely for funding. You have to show that if you are funded, you can achieve these objectives. Back to you, Murtaza.
I was just getting a message saying that one recourse that students should use is during Ashara, there are education counselors under the sort of auspices or the Department of Talabul Ilm, who are there not just to guide you and advise you, but also to guide you with regards to sources of funding. And under Talabul Ilm, there is an organization or body called Minhat Talamiya. I hope I'm saying it right. And many other such funds, including one that Tahir Saifuddin Mola has initiated, which offers students opportunities for funding. So bottom line, as every panelist is saying, be a hurdle. Know that you can overcome that. There are very many options because our entire community is so focused on educating our children and our next generation, regardless of your age, right? With that, I would like, we're coming to the close. We have another 2 minutes left. I'd like each panelist, and maybe starting with Huzaifa Bhai, to say a few final words of advice for both students and parents listening in. Over to you.
Yeah, my talk was basically about people wanting to start business, either starting a business, starting their own business, or starting a journey in their family business. And my focus was basically tertiary education and work experience, ethics, and for the parents, to understand that ethics and discipline have to be instilled from the very beginning before they start, and hopefully that will lead to a successful business.
Hussain bhai?
Yes, to parents, please try and understand. I mean, I know some of our older generation have gone into business, been very successful, and sometimes feel that, whether that since they didn't have an education, whether that should be the same for the next generation. Believe me, things are a lot different, a lot more competitive, and everything that you can do to give your children an edge to do better, to survive, to be able to be successful will help. And education is one of those.
Thanks. Kezar bhai?
I would like to conclude by saying this message is for the parents. When I say parents, it's both father and mother. That please support your children. Please encourage them. Please hold their hand and help them achieve their objectives in terms of education. And I would like to say, fathers, please be involved in their children's education. I have had many sessions specifically with Burhani Serenity School children, and I find that during those sessions, the children are of course present, but it's predominantly the mothers who are there and the fathers are not to be seen. Please be part of this journey with them. The moment you join that journey, you will realize the importance of it. And the second thing is, another challenge that we face is that the successful businesses, where children after O levels or at most A levels, they take them into their businesses and they feel that, okay, there is a successful business and it can continue with. Why do you want to waste time on studying? Don't take that approach, because education will allow the child to come into that same business and maybe multiply it by 10 times, 100 times, 1,000 times. I don't know. Sky is the limit. And also, when children conclude their tertiary education, as Joseph Bhai said, don't drag them directly into your business. Put them into mature, successful, large organizations. Allow them to spend 2 to 3 years at least, so that they understand how professional businesses are run. They will understand the concept of discipline. Yeah, you have to go at 8:30 and you have to work at 5:30. You can't wake up at any time that you want and go to work. They will understand the value of money, because they would be paid fairly small salaries when they start off. And they will continuously learn. Now, I'm telling you a good example about myself. My first job at KPMG paid me 700 rupees a month. At that time, I was crying. But in retrospect, when I think about it, I think I would have paid them money to join them at that time and be trained under them. That's the kind of knowledge that you get, right? So it's a humble request. It's an earnest request. Parents, please support your children. Help them achieve the objectives through education. Back to you, Murtaza.
Thank you so much, guys. I'd like to tell all the participants, parents and students alike, to please reach out to us. Please reach out to Shabir Bhai, the panelists, Rashida Ben, etc. If you have any questions with regards to the topics that we have covered, and if you have any questions that we may not have been able to answer in full, or if you want further clarifications with what we have been speaking about, we hope that you all enjoyed this, benefited from this, and I believe we may continue to share relevant information from this panel subsequently. Thank you so much for the organizers for organizing this, for inviting myself and the panelists to be part of this, and of course for, I would say, almost 200 people who registered, but I'm sure there are many more who are listening in. Finally, I'd like to say that, let us pray that in whatever we do, we have faith that the path Akamola wants us to be on is the right path, and that we have the courage to follow that path. May Allah Ta'ala grant our Mola a long and healthy life till Qayamat. Ameen.
Ameen.
Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you.
Very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much.